Hi, everyone, and welcome to For Immediate Release. This is episode 447, our long-form monthly episode for January 2025. I'm Neville Hobson in the UK.
And I'm Shel Holtz in the US. It's great to be back with a long-form monthly episode.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence figures prominently in this episode. What a surprise. I'm sure you're all shocked, falling out of your chairs. AI, really? And it's interesting timing based on OpenAI's announcement yesterday that they have released their first AI agents. You have to have the $200 a month account to use them right now. I don't. I have the $20 a month account.
Yeah, me too.
It's definitely a hurdle. But Sam Altman did say it's coming for the regular $20 a month account in the next couple of months. I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, we'll hang on to our hats in that case. No, you're right, Shel. This topic features large in many of our topics of discussion today, and all from slightly different angles. So we have some useful stuff to share. And before we get into much more, let's have a look at what we have done since the last monthly episode. We've actually done 5 episodes since then, which is one more, I think, than we've done the previous. Yeah, I mean, that's true. So just a quick rundown on all of them. We've got some comments on some of them too, but a quick rundown. 442 on the 26th of December. We talked about it's still in the news. It's certainly not gone away. The issue between Blake Lively, the actress, and Justin Baldoni on the movie they were on, whose title escapes me completely as I'm speaking these words, but it's all over the news. We discussed the question, why PR is a dirty word. Related to that. It's actually quite interesting, but that thing's still going on. 443 on the 3rd of January, so our first episode in 2025. That was our 20-year anniversary episode. We actually started on the 3rd of January 2005 with the first episode. So on the 3rd of January 2025, we marked that anniversary, and we had, in your words, Shel, a bunch of comments to that.
A whole bunch of comments. I would guess maybe 30, 35. I'm not going to read 30 or 35, but I do have a sampling here to share. Terry Flynn, a communications professor up in Canada, says, congrats, you're both pioneers in podcasting when most people never heard or knew of the term. Your FIR podcast has always been one of my go-to sources for information in the PR and comms field. We had a comment from Kevin Trowbridge, and interestingly, this was a comment that was left on Blue Sky. I began listening when I first started teaching public relations in the fall of 2005. It helped me stay connected to the industry and challenged my thinking about how new technology was changing the way we communicate. It still does. Tom Murphy, who has been listening for a long time, left 2 comments. One, I think, was on Facebook and one was on LinkedIn. He said, an incredible milestone. Congratulations on the 20th anniversary. It always has been and continues to be recommended listening if you're working in communications. And he said basically the same thing in his other post. Donna Papacosta, whose voice you hear saying...
The podcast for communicators.
Right, at the beginning of every episode, says, I still remember discovering the show in the early days. You guys are the best. Alan Schoenberg, like so many of your others, I'm looking forward to listening to this episode. Thank you for having me as a guest more than once and for contributing so much insight and knowledge to the industry. John Cass, who was there in those early days, the New Communication Forum. This was a post he left to your post on LinkedIn. He said, you and Shel are amazing. What a great inspiration to communicators and marketers everywhere. Mark Taylor, well done. I remember listening to your first shows before we left Johannesburg. Been in the UK almost as long now. Gary Goldhammer says, I remember the beginning and was honored to have earned a few mentions. Congrats, you both deserve medals for dedication and perseverance. And Philippe Boromans, congratulations, what a fantastic journey. I remember the start 20 years ago. Thanks for all the great content and conversations. So just a little sampling of what people had to say.
Super. Really nice comments. Thanks, everyone. That's excellent. So then... 444, 9th of January, preparing for Trump 2.0. We talked about that. And that really was looking at the implications for public relations, in particular media relations, with the advent of the new regime coming in, Trump 2.0. And I find that actually a really interesting topic, discussion that we had, Shel, really. So then 445 on the 14th of January, media relations in a turbulent media landscape. And that was a kind of a continuity in a sense. And we had one comment to that, didn't we?
We did, from Shireen Goodman, who is a business coach, who said, "It's fascinating how community connections shape news trust. Navigating this landscape takes creativity and adaptability. Let's embrace the change."
Yeah, good point. And then 446, episode prior to this episode, on the 20th of January, Navigating Grievance is the title of the post. And this was one of the insights from the 2025 Edelman Trust Barometer that had been published literally the day before we recorded that, with the usual excellent analysis and reporting of the findings that revealed a global crisis of grievance and eroding trust in societal institutions. The grievance topic was most interesting, I found, Shell. So it's good that we had the chance to talk about that topic. It's a high-level discussion, didn't drill into a lot of detail, but good nevertheless, I thought.
And you'll hear more about that later in today's episode.
Shortly, actually, yeah.
Very, very shortly. And also posted over the last month is the latest episode of Circle of Fellows, that monthly panel discussion with usually 4 IABC fellows. I tend to moderate those, and I moderated this one on sparking creativity. It was a really fun episode with Zora Artis, Diane Gajewski, Andrea Greenhouse, and Martha Mazichka. Our next episode, if you would like to mark it in your calendar and participate in real time, will be on Monday, February 24th at noon, and this will deal with communication ethics. Yeah, I wonder if Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni will come up in that conversation. Not if we don't want to be sued by Baldoni, right? And Diane Gajewski is coming back for that episode, along with Todd Hattori, Jane Mitchell, and Carolyn Sapriel. I have one other quick announcement to make about Circle of Fellows, because this is actually pretty exciting. The IABC, the International Association of Business Communicators Conference, is scheduled for June in Vancouver, and we had this idea of submitting a speaker proposal to do Speaker of the Circle of Fellows there, and it was accepted. Cool. So we will be doing an episode of Circle of Fellows. It will be on this issue of the Edelman Trust Barometer and communicating in this era of grievance. And it's going to use exactly the same format as Circle of Fellows does routinely. You'll be able to watch the stream live and participate with comments and observations and the like. It'll still be available as a video replay and a podcast, but it will be recorded live in front of an audience in Vancouver. So very excited about that.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great thing. So we did a few of those back in the day, didn't we? Broadcast. We did one that sticks in my mind. Certainly was a Reagan conference in Amsterdam, where you and I were on stage doing an episode. And there were a few others. You did a few, but we have done that before. But that's a gap of 15 years or so, I think.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in the anniversary episode, but there was one where I was speaking to, I think it was an IABC chapter, it might have been in Massachusetts, where I brought a soundboard and multiple microphones, and you were, wherever you were, it was either the UK or the Netherlands. I don't remember how long ago this was.
I think, is that the one Philip Bormans was doing when he was at IBM? There was one.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
I was at that event in Belgium, and you dialed in via Skype, if I recall correctly, from the States.
It could be. Then that might have been the one. But yeah, I dialed in via Skype, and we took questions from the audience. I walked around with a handheld mic.
That's cool.
And we recorded the episode that way. It was a nightmare to set that up and make sure that it all worked back in those days.
Now it would be easy.
It would be very easy today. Yes, it would.
We've got to find an event we could get into or do that again, Shell, I think.
That would be fun. Cool. We haven't done that in a long time. We've gotten into a rut.
So event organizers on PR-related topics, hello, just let us know. So we've got in the pipeline a couple of really good interviews. We had, you and I talked to Sylvia Camby just the other day about, guess what? AI loomed large in that conversation. Sylvia is someone I've known for close to 2 decades, and she is a renowned communicator. She's got a lot of experience and memories to share on these topics and others. So that interview, we're looking to publish it in the first week of February. And then coming up to have a chat with is our old friend, Steve Rubell. Steve was a pioneer 20-odd years ago at the dawn of blogging. It wasn't even called social media back in those days, before he went to Edelman. And he was quite a mentor to a lot of people, me included, actually. So we had the opportunity to book him and have him appear on the show in an FIR interview. So that interview is coming up in mid-February. And we're likely to publish that one at the end of February. If not, it'll be very early in March. But that's the kind of time frame we're looking at. So we're looking forward to that. So 2 in the pipeline and a couple of others pending discussion and cementing. So we're looking pretty good for really good conversations over the coming months.
Great content coming out of the FIR Podcast Network. And we will be back with our reports right after this message.
So I got the wrong page. Wait. Okay.
No worries. I had to make a time code note here anyway.
You did.
So that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So as I mentioned, the navigating grievance was a primary topic in Edelman's Trust Barometer, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and a related topic to it. So we discussed the Trust Barometer that had just been released. We took a high-level journey through the findings of that report, which revealed a global crisis of grievance and eroding trust in societal institutions. That's government, business, media, and NGOs. Key topics include the impact of trust inequality, the rise of hostile activism, and the expectations placed on CEOs to address societal issues. And by the way, some of these terms might be new to you, but they're going to become very familiar over the coming years, I reckon, particularly hostile activism. It's a very ugly phrase, but it's an illustration of what's happening today that would not be thought about, even perhaps as recently as 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago. Trust inequality. So that is a great look at something that's emerging. With it, too, in the context of why I'm introducing it this way, is a report from Fleischmann-Hillard that was published last month on 5 trends for corporate affairs in 2025. Each trend addresses a specific theme: managing the wave of politics, how geopolitics becomes the day job, ubiquitous malignancy from misinformation everywhere, new sources of data and new applications, and bigger things are coming as AI moves ahead. So both the Edelman and the Fleischmann-Hillard reports converge on a critical issue. That's the escalating distrust and misinformation, which are eroding societal cohesion and institutional credibility. Edelman's findings reveal this global age of grievance, driven by economic insecurity, systemic inequality, and political polarization. This leads to a zero-sum mindset, they say, where any gain for one group is seen as a loss for another. Notably, 61% of respondents globally reported moderate or high grievances, feeling that institutions favor the wealthy while ordinary people struggle. As institutions fail to address these grievances, disillusionment intensifies, manifesting in polarized media narratives and hostile activism, among other things. Young people are particularly disillusioned, with over half endorsing hostile activism as a legitimate means of driving change. Compounding these issues is the trend of ubiquitous malignancy. That's a magnificent phrase, I think, Shell. Or misinformation in everything, everywhere, all of the time, to coin a phrase.
As Dave Berry would say, ubiquitous malignancy would be a great name for a rock band.
Absolutely. Described by, or a podcast perhaps. So that's described by Fleischmann-Hillard as a defining challenge for corporate affairs in 2025, where misinformation, deepfakes, and bot-driven content are pervasive. Malignancy in communication now exists in every conversation, they say, requiring organizations to assess and manage the balance between authentic and inauthentic narratives. Organizations face the dual challenge of addressing stakeholder grievances while navigating a fractured communication landscape. Authentic engagement and decisive intervention in the spread of false narratives are crucial to rebuilding trust and mitigating societal divisions. According to Edelman's report, business emerges as the most capable institution to lead these efforts but cannot act alone. Collaborative solutions involving NGOs, governments, and media are essential. Trust-building initiatives, transparency in communication, and ethical leadership can transform grievance into optimism and enable progress in an era where information credibility is paramount. In their report, Fleischmann-Hillard urges communicators to move beyond conventional methods, leveraging behavioral science to understand audience sentiment and apply channel-specific techniques to maintain trust and credibility in a fractured landscape. So addressing these interconnected challenges requires communicators to remain vigilant, adaptable, and committed to fostering trust across every platform and interaction. Whether it's reversing the crisis of grievance or addressing ubiquitous malignancy, this applies to everything, everywhere, all of the time. How do you see it, Charles?
I see it as a minefield, frankly, right now. All of the things that you have posited are absolutely true. I don't know what the solutions are. You have people who are mired within their bubbles, and the algorithms from the social networks that they engage in are feeding them outrage because that's what keeps them on the platform, which is what makes the platforms money. Is when they stay and see more ads and the like. So there's certainly have to be steps, measures that business leaders can take informed by their public relations and communications professionals. But at this point, I'm not sure what they are. I think authenticity is vital. You will hear authenticity as a theme in several of the reports coming up today. And I think that candor is important. I think those collaborative efforts, those partnerships that you referenced are going to be important when you can see unity among different groups talking authentically and addressing these issues. Part of it, I think, is going to be not so much trying to talk people out of their grievance as helping them see that either the grievance is unjustified or is being addressed one way or another. I'm not quite sure how you do that, especially when the grievance is especially unjustified. But we got into this pickle in the first place because of algorithms, right? I mean, it wasn't like this. I mean, there was a left and a right before algorithms took control of social media feeds. But what you saw in those feeds was just the most recent posts from your friends and other people you were connected to. Now it's ginning up outrage because the algorithm has figured out that outrage is what keeps you glued to the network. So as long as that continues, I don't know how we're going to fix this. And the answer might be part of what we're going to be discussing later in the episode, which is convincing people to leave the algorithm-driven networks and go to ones that are more organic, where you can have nice conversations about things you're interested in with people you like conversing with and not be fed this constant stream of outrage.
Yeah, it is a huge picture. And I think the way you started your comment earlier was, not sure where this is going to go. I agree. And I'm thinking one thing that comes across from Edelman's report in particular was some key actions, and Fleischmann-Hillard has similar to calls to action for communicators, for instance. These, though, require you to realize or to believe that this is a winnable contest. You can win this, and that's not therefore the other guy loses, which is the Trump approach to things, I think. It's win, you win, and there's got to be a win everywhere. That's trying to I think, establish it in a way that most people are willing to consider that approach. But the real reality, I think, is this is so big, it's global, it's everywhere. How do you address it? And therein, I think, becomes part of the challenge, is you've got to pick something and do something about it. And that, in my view, is a leadership issue, but it probably needs the communicators to stimulate that in a way that a leader can grab hold of and do something with. You mentioned authenticity, and being authentic, absolutely key. The transparency of it. But to me, it's like you could do something in an organization that really does require first a centralized approach from a government, typically, to really lead the charge. And we're not actually seeing that, I don't think. So does it mean that you then wait for the condition to be right for that to happen? No, you've got to do something for your own organization, in which case you might see repetitive actions taking place, and you probably want to share some of it, but not all of what you're doing. But at the bottom line, I think, is if you're the communicator in a large enterprise, typically, then you have to take a lead in doing something. Yeah. So, things like, you mentioned or repeated the point I made about collaboration across those different sectors, those four institutions of society. Sure, absolutely. Partner with the government, NGOs, and the media to tackle these things. That's easier said than done, because it would have been done by now if it were easy. So equip your own teams for the complexity. Literally get everyone to believe this is the new normal, this landscape. the hostile activism, which ranges from sharing misinformation online strongly, but also insulting people, attacking them online, and as Edelman's report makes very clear indeed, even physical violence in real life. That this is alarming, but this is the landscape. Not everywhere, but in some places. So, what we're discussing may be kind of way beyond someone's interest or understanding if they're in a rural community in Central Africa, for example, compared to being in New York City or in London or in Paris or somewhere like that. But the reality is that this is the reality. And, I kind of tongue-in-cheek using the strapline from the movie, everything, everywhere, all of the time. But that's exactly how it is. And that's a point Fleischmann-Hillard makes quite strongly. So it's something that I think that positions communicators as key players in whatever action you take in an organization is something that really, if you're a communicator, you need to grab that opportunity and do something.
Yeah, the problem is that I think that there are underlying issues here that I'm not sure business is in any position to influence greatly. Look at the issue of violence in politics. I have read several reports that there is a growing number of people who believe that violence is justified in political causes in the U.S. So what does business do about that? And it is my personal belief, and this is based on, seriously, a tremendous amount of study. I've read many books and listened to a lot of lectures and tried to absorb both sides on this issue. But I think the underlying cause of the vast majority of this grievance and ubiquitous malignancy is in the caste system and institutionalized racism. The remedy for that has been DEI initiatives, and we have an administration now that is doing all it can to erase those. You see attacks on leaders. Some have already been fired in the U.S. government, claiming that they're DEI hires. All that means is that they're not white men. It doesn't mean that they're not qualified. It's just code for we want white men in these positions. What does business do beyond maintain their DEI efforts? And many are not. Many are rolling over because they have government contracts or they just want to stay out of Donald Trump's crosshairs as his retribution tour gets underway. I want to think that there are ways that business can deal with this. I imagine that there will be a lot of creativity employed. I know that there are people out there like Kim Clark holding weekly calls about what we can do to address this. She's focused specifically on DEI, but the big picture is that this is something I think we have to get through and do what we can to improve things and to address it and to ensure that our stakeholders feel comfortable with us so that we can continue to do business. But the idea that we can fix this, I think that's a bigger thing than what PR people can do and what business can do. We can contribute. Yeah. But Edelman saying that business is in a better position than anybody else is not a big help, frankly.
No, it requires all these elements to be in play as well, the collaborative efforts, etc. I think you're right, Shell. I think, I'm hopeful that we'll see pushback more than we're seeing some already, but we don't know the outcome of that yet. I mean, there's some local. I was reading one of the UK newspapers today that there's an example across the US in various states of state governments not going to take action according to what Trump's executive order is on whatever the topic is. Whether that's successful or not, we don't know. Is Trump, is he likely to somehow enforce these things? What I do see, though, and I hope I'm dreadfully wrong here, is a severe dark age approaching in the United States that will have implications everywhere. And I think it might be longer than 4 years, assuming he doesn't get elected. He can't, actually, can he? He can only run for 2 terms.
There's a measure that has been introduced in the House that would give him a 3rd term. So,
But it reminds me of a headline in The Guardian the other day with an excellent illustration talking about, it was an opinion piece. It showed Trump sitting on a throne with a crown. And it showed, this is caricatures really, of the 3 tech bros, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Musk. Groveling at his feet. Basically, it said something. This is where the dark age comment of mine comes into, that Trump is the emperor. He's behaving like an emperor, and he sees himself outside the law. And history shows us that when an empress does that, the acolytes also see themselves outside the law. So, and the comment was made, which I thought was very apt, that George Washington would understand all this because this is what he wanted to get away from in establishing the United States in the revolution that took place. It wasn't about tea at all. It was about getting rid of this kind of thing. And guess what? You've got a modern day emperor in the making. And most people, I think, might think that's a crazy thing to say, but don't do that. Pay attention to what's happening in that regard because that's what it looks like, Shep.
It's absolutely what it looks like. And you talked about pushback, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to go about that effectively. One thing we know, we've talked about this on the show before, is that citing facts and statistics doesn't sway people.
No.
I'm thinking, just for example, during the Charlottesville march back during Trump's first term, what they were all shouting was, Jews will not replace us. Well, Jews represent 0.02% of the world population. 40% of all of the Jews in the world live in Israel. Sorry, we're not replacing anybody. But citing those facts is not going to sway these people from their views of replacement theory, which is just one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. But they believe it. And you cite your data, they're going to say, I have my facts. So how do you persuade? Maybe you chain them to a chair and make them work with DebunkBot. But
no,
I think business has limited opportunities here. They should focus on what they're doing internally for the most part, I think.
Yeah, that would make sense. You have to do something, and it doesn't mean blindly do something. Think about what we said on the calls to action, for instance, what communicators could do. Things like equipping teams for complexity, have people understand this is the new normal, perhaps, or even if it's not, but have the discussion and make some plans accordingly. So you can align some of the things you do and reinforce these messaging, align with core values. I mean, these are all things that are communication focused, that are part of the skill set communicators should have and can now exercise. So that would be a good place to be.
I also think a shift to stakeholder capitalism would be very helpful, and this is an attitude that a business adopts. We heard it articulated first when the U.S. Business Roundtable said we're no longer going to focus solely on shareholders, but all stakeholders. That has evolved into this concept of stakeholder capitalism. It's still capitalism. It's still about making money. It's just making sure that that money is fairly distributed and that the issues and concerns of all of your stakeholders are factored into the decisions that you make, not just the shareholders. And I think that could have some sort of impact on grievance, although not the key grievance that has led us to where we are. Well, let's talk about artificial intelligence, because it's been grim up to this point, Neville. There's been some reporting over the last couple of weeks that's worth a quick rundown. Some new research and developments, notably around agents and brands. But let me cover a couple of other things first. Starting with how AI characterizes brands, and there is research that finds that AI search platforms portray brands differently. So Perplexity tends to emphasize a brand's positive attributes when somebody queries it about a brand or when a query produces results that include a brand. But Anthropic's Claude will tend to bring up past controversies that the brand experienced. Now, this variability is significant. It means the way a brand is described depends on the AI platform that people are using, and that adds a layer of complexity to brand management. For communicators, this is underscoring the importance of monitoring how AI platforms talk about your brand, position your brand, and take proactive steps to shape that narrative by making sure that your messaging is consistent and transparent. Next, we have Meta's end to fact-checking in the U.S. and reliance on community notes has AI-related implications that we really haven't spent a lot of time talking about. Meta's change of heart is part of a larger convergence of technological advancement, political change, and those evolving media dynamics that we talked about a couple episodes back. This is according to a site I found called TV News Check. I had never heard of it, but it's got some really interesting content on it. This shift signals a fundamental change in how social media platforms approach truth. For instance, a study by CopyLeaks found that there was an 8,362% increase in AI-generated content on the net from November of 2022 to March of 2024. That's almost an 8,500% increase in a year and a half. Now, imagine how that's going to affect the ability to maintain online information integrity. With Meta doing away with its content moderation, a lot of this AI-generated malicious slop is going to be shared on Facebook. And as AI-generated content continues to proliferate across the net, we'll probably see information availability overshadow information quality. As we move from paying attention to journalists to newsfluencers, who's going to maintain accuracy amid all that slop? But let's talk about agents. As we mentioned at the top of the show, OpenAI has introduced its first agents. They're limited in capability. They can't do anything malicious, but they're the first shot out of the gate. And it's one of the most exciting developments in Gen AI is the rise of agents that can perform tasks on behalf of consumers, book flights, order meals, manage your calendar. But what does this mean for brands? For one, AI agents provide an opportunity to streamline and personalize the consumer experience. When a user asks their AI agent for recommendations, whether it's for restaurants, hotels, products, the agent pulls from the information available online to make suggestions. That puts the onus on brands to ensure that their digital presence is optimized for AI interactions. If your product isn't well represented in AI searchable databases or reviews, you risk being overlooked. Brands can enhance these experiences by creating AI-friendly content. For example, structured data on your website can help AI agents better understand and recommend your offerings. If a consumer asks an agent for a family-friendly hotel near the beach, a brand with properly tagged data about location, amenities, and reviews is far more likely to get that recommendation. Another strategy is to partner with platforms integrating AI agents. Imagine an airline developing seamless integrations where an AI agent can book flights, select seats, and notify travelers about upgrades in the brand's voice. Or think about a retail brand enabling AI agents to handle returns, answer product questions, and suggest complementary items based on purchase history. The real opportunity lies in how brands humanize these interactions. AI agents shouldn't just execute transactions, they should reflect the brand's personality. For example, a luxury brand's AI interactions might emphasize exclusivity and elegance, while a family-oriented brand might focus on warmth and ease of use. These nuanced touches can turn mundane AI-driven interactions into memorable brand experiences. Finally, brands have to consider accessibility. Agents should enhance, not limit, how diverse audiences interact with your brand. So ensuring your product descriptions and services are available in multiple languages can help AI agents provide more inclusive results. Moving along from agents, let's talk about proactive PR with platforms like OpenAI and Google analyzing millions of data points to surface trending topics. Brands need to be quick on their feet. Reactive PR is not adequate. Communicators can use AI tools to monitor these trends in real time, allowing brands to engage in relevant conversations as they unfold. I have set up a couple of ChatGPT tasks that alert me to things that are happening that I'm not finding through the other tools that I have that might incline me to want to get some proactive messaging out. An example might be if a trending topic aligns with your brand's mission or values, you can craft timely, authentic messaging to join that conversation. This not only keeps your brand visible, but also positions it as responsive and in touch with the world around it. And finally, brands are tapping into Gen AI to foster creativity and engagement. Campaigns where consumers use AI to design products or create unique artworks are becoming increasingly popular. For instance, fashion brands have used generative AI to allow customers to co-create designs, making them feel more personally invested in the brand. This kind of collaboration not only produces highly personalized content, but also deepens the emotional connection between the brand and its audience. It's really a win-win. Consumers get a unique experience. Brands gain advocates who are excited to share their creations with their networks. So lots of opportunities for brands emerging in the AI space that really goes beyond having it write content and create images.
Yeah, absolutely. It got me thinking, listening to what you were saying, particularly about OpenAI's operator, the agent they've built, and also this last bit you talked about, reactive PR and so forth. That when we talk about the state of PR, and we've got a report coming up on that, actually, the state of AI in PR, it's still largely focused on how many since the last time and what they're doing by percentages. And what we're going to talk about in a bit is not much different to that, or we got some better views on it. This, though, is the next level that we need to be paying close attention to. And it's easier to do that because now everyone, I mean, this is very loosely talking here, of course, everyone has acquired the knowledge. They're up to speed on those basics now. How many people are using AI? Yeah, I get it to write this, I get to review this or summarize that report or whatever. This is now what we need to be paying attention to. And that article you shared for what you were saying from Search Engine Land has a really simple but very clear kind of explainer at the end, knowing when to leverage reactive PR versus proactive PR, where AI plays a significant role. And this, when you read this, you'll think, oh, yeah, that makes sense. But first time I've seen this all together this way. It's well done. So reactive PR, the example they're giving is capitalizing on breaking news. So there's something happening that outside your control, you didn't instigate it. Here's things you can do.
News jacking.
Proactive, aligning with cyclical news. I mean, these are terrific examples. So, good for you, Search Engine Land, for putting that post together. It's really, really useful. I think the exciting one, though, to me is indeed this OpenAI agent, the operator, and how they explain it in the introduction page on their website is exactly what you were saying at the very start of this segment, examples of what they could do. So, it's like, you'll give it the task, you'll prompt it. I mean, this is putting it in real simple terms, and off it will go to fulfill your task and then come back to you. But then there's much more it'll do. It'll ask you questions that you haven't prompted. It would even be able to do multitasking whilst it's doing these things unprompted. So that's handy. And especially things like the example they give is dead simple, but, it's the way they explained it to OpenAI is similar to using multiple tabs in a browser. So the operator is doing multiple tasks simultaneously by creating new conversations. So the example they give, whilst it's making a booking for a holiday on a holiday website, it's also ordering a personalized enamel mug on Etsy, like the FIR podcast mug. We had those back in the day, didn't we?
We
not
did.
Not on Etsy, mind you.
No.
So these are really good. It reminds me, again, the experience back at IBM with IBM Watson. What they were talking about is this, except they were linking it to business productivity tools like equivalent of Outlook, for instance, not just the email, but everything, the calendar, the contact list and all that, would manage your agenda for you, manage your business life for you, meetings and accepting requests, all that kind of stuff. And it'll do all that, right? Eventually, you'll have an agent that will do all that for you. But the way they describe this is wider and probably far more exciting to a general audience, not just business here. And this is fantastic. So this is where we need to be, I think, in our journey of knowledge of what's possible with artificial intelligence. And generally talking, it's about generative artificial intelligence, but not exclusively in a business sense. And for brands specifically, which is the focus of this conversation. So this is really good.
Yeah, IBM had an intranet years and years ago. We talked about it on the show, but I bet it was toward the beginning of our work together. It had a homepage that had a module that would look at your calendar, identify what was coming up, and then provide you with resources to help you. And so if you were doing an interview, it would link you to the interview guide and the talent acquisition guide. If you were doing a performance review, it would link you to appropriate resources for that. And, I work with somebody I was telling about this, and she said, that's the dream, is that the intranet helps me through my day without making me go look for stuff. It knows what I'm doing and proactively delivers it. AI agents will do that. Drop dead easy. Just set up an agent to do that and house it in a module on the homepage of the intranet so that it is targeted to each individual employee through Active Directory or what have you, and it's done. So I think that's coming. In terms of just popped out of my head. Got it.
Okay.
In terms of proactive PR, what strikes me about this concept is that there's nothing new to it. You talked about what's happening in the news. David Meerman Scott, how long ago did he write the book on newsjacking? It was real popular for a while, but I don't see much of it anymore. Then we did a report years ago. This was, I think it was a tequila brand that on Instagram shared a picture of the tequila bottle and a couple of glasses and some coffee beans. And it's because coffee bean martinis were trending on Google. They saw that in the Google Trends report that you can go look at anytime you want. And they said, wow, look at everybody talking about. Let's jump into this conversation. So these ideas are not new, but they haven't been broadly embraced. We continue to lean on the old practices of public relations, which is reacting to something that has happened so that we can fix it. And that's got to change. I mean, we can't stop reacting. If something happens, we have to address it. But we have to balance that with proactive PR that helps get our messages across and move the needle, or maybe even move the Overton window if we should be so lucky.
I think as more people do this, more knowledge will disseminate, and we'll see an uptick in this, I hope. But this is really interesting stuff, I have to say, Shell, really is. So on that point, let's talk about that survey I mentioned, that research about what's happening with AI and PR. That is a survey report from Muckrec that's just come out. So this I found quite interesting when I was looking into this, about how we're going to talk about this, because I thought, okay, let's just look at some linking here. So there's no doubt that developments in AI are moving at quite a pace. I think we agree on that. I said those words back in March 2023, nearly 2 years ago. In a blog post about AI and PR, I wrote, while hype is at its peak, the time is now for learning more about AI, experimenting with it yourself, and discovering how it can be of distinct value to you in your work and in your leisure. With learning and experimenting comes the confidence to discard the hype as you glean insights that help you focus on what matters and what actually is important. Except in a large part in the PR profession, I said. At the time, the survey by the PRCA, that's the Public Relations Consultants Association, and the ICCO, that's the International Communications Consultancy Organization, revealed that 25% of respondents categorically stated they would never use AI tools like ChatGPT in their work. I mean, that's come back to haunt them, I tell you. Thankfully, we've come a long way since then. According to Muckrec's latest report on the state of AI and PR for 2025, published this week, 3/4 of PR professionals, 75%, are now using tools like ChatGPT and DALL-E to elevate their work. This is substantial progress, I think, according to Muckrec's figures, which show that this is only 28% in 2023, rising to 64% in 2024. So we've seen a clear progression there. The report paints a fascinating picture of an industry quickly embracing this technology, with 93% of users saying it speeds up their work and 78% claiming it improves quality. What's especially interesting is how PR pros are using AI, not just for writing and editing, but for brainstorming, research, even strategy development. Yet, as exciting as this adoption is, the report raises questions about how well the industry is managing this shift. Fewer than 40% of PR professionals say their organizations have clear AI use policies, and fewer than half provide any training. This means many practitioners are navigating this space with little guidance, relying on their own judgment for ethical use and disclosure. The report also highlights risks that can't be ignored. A top concern? The next generation of PR professionals may become too dependent on AI, neglecting the core skills that underpin the craft. There's also fear that clients or leadership might see AI as a shortcut for creativity, undervaluing the unique contributions of human practitioners. So where does all this leave us? We've seen how AI can amplify creativity and efficiency, yet its impact on foundational skills and values remains uncertain. Muckrec's report offers a powerful snapshot of where we stand, but also challenges us to think about where we're headed. How do we strike the right balance between innovation and authenticity, between speeding up processes and preserving the craft? These are critical questions. How can PR professionals use generative AI to create meaningful outcomes while safeguarding the integrity of their work? What steps can the industry take to support ethical and effective use? Big questions, I think, Shell.
Very big questions. And even with the strategic development and brainstorming and other uses to which PR practitioners are putting AI, I still think that we are focused on low-hanging fruit and not really digging into some of the potential, nor I think are we examining how we're going to be able to use it as the agents become available. Anthropic has a demo version of an agent. It doesn't actually run on your computer. It runs on a virtual machine so that nothing that goes wrong can infect your computer or affect your security or your privacy. But I gave it a try. I went ahead and installed what I needed to install on my computer to run the virtual machine, and I ran the agent. And I produced a video. It's on LinkedIn and Facebook and on my YouTube channel. But what I used it for was to identify opportunities in construction-related conferences in 2025 that had open calls for speakers, or the calls for speakers were going to come out during the year, where the conferences provided us with an opportunity to showcase our subject matter experts in the market sectors where we operate. So my instructions were really clear. I said, first, go to my company's website and identify our market sectors and our areas of subject matter expertise. Then find relevant top-tier construction-related conferences, and I gave it the instructions about calls for speakers. And I said, write a document with a strategy for getting into these conferences and create a spreadsheet that lists the top 10 conference, its date, the URL for the conference, when the call for speaker deadlines are, and I set it off. And you could see in the left-hand column, it would explain each step. In fact, what it did was it took a screenshot after it had completed each step of the desktop so it could see what it had done and what it had to do next. But I just sat there with my arms folded. Well, not quite, because I occasionally would get a message that said, you have reached your rate limit. And I would have to type, please continue. Or it would say, you have to wait 1 minute and 30 seconds to get a new rate limit. And I go, okay. And then I'd say, please continue. But other than please continue, all I did was sit there with my arms folded and watch it do this as it created a document and a spreadsheet. You start to apply this to other work that we do in PR and communications, and it begins to really seem overwhelming how much of our day-to-day activity is going to be taken over by a well-prompted AI agent. I think this report is right, though, in advising caution, because a lot of this work is work that an intern would do. If I were in a large enough department that I would have an intern, I would have an intern go out and find the conferences. I would probably spend an hour with an intern first, so they understand what our areas of expertise are and what our market sectors are. Then I would turn them loose, and they would probably spend a day and a half reading about each conference and noting the dates of the call for speakers and what the requirements were. I don't need an intern for that anymore. An AI agent will be able to do that in 3 or 4 minutes. Without an intern, who learns the entry-level ropes to begin their progress up the ladder to becoming a partner or becoming a vice president of communications or a chief communication officer? I think this is a serious problem, and not enough attention is being paid to it, because there is so much excitement about what this can take off our plate that we're not thinking about how the up-and-coming people in this industry learn the ropes. There's just seems to me going to be fewer and fewer ropes to learn.
Yeah, that's a very good point to emphasize. We are excited by all this, and we are galloping down the road with excitement, and this is falling by the wayside, it seems to me. It also seems to me that we need to address this now, because the pace is picking up, and the new outcomes that people are talking about are accelerating in the frequency and the shortening the time between them all. So now is the time to be looking at this. And it could well be that, and not just in communication, I think the legal profession and many other professions where that sort of description you made of a career path, let's say, a knowledge path, an insights path in an organization is well, and for most organizations, I would say it's important. But that is, we expressed it well, that we're relying on something that can perform all those tasks in minutes as opposed to days. And we have choices here. What are we going to do? we're going to do the minutes, aren't we? Not the dates. And plus, we'll save money on our budget. So that kind of thing, it definitely needs to be addressed at an organizational level, I would say.
I think if I were the leader of a public relations agency, I would be convening my top leadership and starting the process of rethinking career paths. And I would be doing that in the client side too, frankly. We know, especially among millennials and Gen Z, how important career development is to them in the jobs that they choose. They want a company that is going to pay attention to them, take their desires to grow seriously and provide them with not just the opportunities to learn, but a clear path to get to where they want to go with their managers working with them. With AI taking over a lot of these roles, what does that career path look like? In a lot of jobs, I mean, I work in construction, so a lot of construction jobs, frankly, aren't going to change that much until we have AI-empowered robots that can actually go, do a concrete pour or, build rebar formwork or what have you. But for a lot of jobs, how you get from a college degree to wherever it is you want to end up in your career is going to look very different. And this is on top of the fact that anybody who thinks that we're not going to have significant job loss down the road from this just isn't paying enough attention to what's actually happening. There are going to be a lot of people out of work at some point, and as a society, we need to figure out what to do about this. I've already heard somebody refer to it, we're just creating a big welfare state, and as a perception problem. The idea of a universal basic income, when the machines are generating all the wealth, is not the same as a welfare state. Not suggesting that's the only solution. I don't know. That's for other people to figure out. But somebody has to start figuring it out because we're going to get there sooner than we're ready for. And so what we can do at the business level is start to think about our employees and how we're going to accommodate their desires to grow in their careers in a world where AI is doing 60, 70, 80% of what that job used to do 5 years ago. I think
now we
that's
got
Dan
Dan.
York, huh?
So give me 2 minutes. I need a pee.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, I thought I'd last, but I had a zero just before we started. And
Best
don't
product
do
Coke
that
has
again.
ever made.
I'll be right back, okay? 2 minutes. chilly. It's chilly out there. It's about 3 degrees Celsius.
That's right.
And I'm sitting.
You have to go outside to go to the bathroom.
It's fun when it's pouring with rain, as it was yesterday. I got 2 umbrellas in here. We've had, like you mentioned about construction inside the house with the stair banner. We've had a landscape gardener here for the past week, laying a new path, putting in a patio paving that was on the to-do list. But the rain interfered with the path, and stuff wasn't raining, so we had a lake outside here. That's been fun. But anyway, I'm back now. 20 degrees in here. It's nice and cozy in here.
Oh, nice. You have your own HVAC in there, right?
Yeah, there's heating in here. There's the wall insulation helps, and the computer, of course, gives off heat. So all this adds up. It's quite nice.
Yep. Cool.
So anyway, so we did Dan.
You're going to say thanks? You say thanks, Dan?
Okay, because I can then mention, because he made reference to the Facebook dilemma. So I'll just say that we got that topic coming up soon.
Coming up. Yeah. Okay.
I've forgotten what else he said. I'll just probably say
it was
that.
Mostly TikTok.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't really want to. I've got nothing to say on that, to be honest, Dan. Do you want to say something to it?
I think Dan? Just thanks, Dan, and the Facebook thing. So
okay,
all right.
Well, thanks, Dan. Great report. Interesting stuff about TikTok, I must admit. Does not had any impact over here other than what we read in the tech journals and stuff like that. Your comment about Facebook and the dilemma, we've got that topic coming up very, very shortly. And I think it is a dilemma to many, but it's something that is with us. We have to make decisions, don't we? So, but thanks. Great report.
It's a dilemma to me. We'll talk about that. But first, with the tectonic shifts in the media, is content marketing still as viable a practice as it has been? The Content Marketing Institute's 2025 Enterprise Content Marketing Research Report finds that while content marketing is thriving, the landscape has become more complex. For openers, there's good news. The report highlights that 71% of enterprise marketers surveyed believe their organization's content marketing efforts are either moderately or very successful, which is actually a slight increase from last year. But success isn't without its challenges. One key takeaway from the report is the growing pressure to prove return on investment. With budgets tightening in many industries, leadership teams are scrutinizing content marketing investments more than ever. Teams that document their strategies are significantly more likely to succeed at this. The report emphasizes that organizations with clear goals, audience personas, which is important, and workflows are better equipped to produce the kind of content that delivers measurable ROI, and they're able to demonstrate that to those leaders, who presumably will then leave their budgets alone. Just a few weeks into 2025, employee-generated content is emerging as a powerful tool, particularly for B2B brands. According to an article in Forbes, tapping into the voices of employees enhances authenticity and extends reach. Employees tend to have their own personal networks of family, friends, and colleagues who trust their recommendations, making their content a valuable asset for brand storytelling. So if you do a video that features one of your employees, it's not just going to get shared through your networks, but through their networks. Take as an example how a B2B SaaS company might encourage sales reps to share tips on LinkedIn about how they use their company's software. These posts come across as genuine, relatable, and more credible than corporate promotions. We also, in content marketing, need to start thinking about Gen Alpha. Much of today's content marketing targets are millennials and Gen Z. But Gen Alpha, the kids born from 2010 through this past December 31st, you know that, right? Anyone born as of January 1st this year is part of Generation Beta. But in terms of Gen Alpha, Marketing Brew recently spotlighted how brands like Kids Bop are using platforms like Roblox to connect with the Alpha demographic. Kids Bop partnered with GameFam to create an interactive experience within Roblox where kids could engage with the brand through mini games and music. This matters because Gen Alpha represents the future of consumer culture. Not to mention that the oldest of them are already 15 and marketing targets. They're growing up with digital experiences, and their expectations for engagement are through the roof. For brands, this means creating content that's immersive, interactive, and seamlessly integrated to the platforms where they spend their time. By the way, immersion is something to consider for internal communications too. And this doesn't mean people putting on VR headsets necessarily, but as Monique Zitnick would put it, putting employees at the center of the communication process. just like the Roblox initiative, put kids at the center of that experience. So what should we take away from all this? The content marketing landscape in 2025 is shaped by three big factors: strategy, authenticity, there's that word again, and adaptability. So document your strategy. The Content Marketing Institute report makes it clear. Organizations with documented strategies perform better. It isn't just about having a plan, it's creating a roadmap that aligns content with both business goals and audience needs, finding that point of connection. We need to leverage employee voices because encouraging employees to become content creators is going to extend your reach and deepen audience trust. Doesn't matter whether it's sharing their expertise on LinkedIn or contributing to a company blog. And experiment with emerging platforms. Keep an eye on how platforms like Roblox evolve. Even if your brand isn't targeting Gen Alpha today, understand these environments in order to prepare yourself for tomorrow's audiences. Of course, we're going to keep an eye on these trends and share any insights that will help you stay ahead. But Neville, what do you think about content marketing today?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, by the way, at the end of that last statement, you said you're going to add, so you don't have to. But we don't say that. We want to do
have
this.
to. It's on you as much as it's on us.
Right, exactly. I find it intriguing, to be honest, Shell, in one particular area, which is listening to what you were saying and looking at some of the articles that you were referencing. This is stuff I remember being on kind of discussion agendas 2 decades ago. Really, we didn't call it content marketing back then. So I'm thinking, are we still in the sorry state where we need to remind people these are the things you've got to do in organizations? Is that what it looks like to you? Because that's what it seems like to me.
Yes, that's exactly where we are. And if you look at a lot of the content that's coming out of organizations today, it's clear that people have not necessarily embraced the principles of content marketing. And, you have the Content Marketing Institute, which does really excellent work in this space. I don't think enough organizations pay attention to the learning that they share.
Yeah, okay, I get that, and I think that sounds reasonable. I'm just looking at one of the points made in the Content Marketing Institute's report. Nearly half of enterprise marketers do not have a scalable model for content creation. I find that quite extraordinary.
Isn't it?
Where they talk about, really, I mean, they talk about, where is it? 33% do, 46% do not, but get this, 21% don't know if they do. Imagine.
That's an unknown, or a known unknown, I guess.
Right. And they say we have a long way to go still. And I think that's absolutely right. There's many reasons why they give. And to be fair, I mean, I make it sound like people are being really silly but not paying attention to this. There are many reasons why there are difficulties with this. One of them, which is actually the least, occurred to me first, lack of data skills and talent, even the expertise to do this kind of work. So you've got the wrong people on board or not the right people at all. Difficulty tracking customer journeys. This is in the measurement area. 66% of people say that. So my comment about, isn't this what we were talking about 2 decades ago is valid, and people aren't paying attention. Well, they probably are, but these are newer challenges that are impacting them now. And I think this, though, is quite significant to some of these kind of alarm bells I'm seeing written, being talked about, that are still what they were that time ago, except wearing a new suit of clothes probably. But it seems there's a lot of work still to do in this area.
A tremendous amount of work. I suspect a lot of organizations say they're doing content marketing, but what they're really doing is just bad marketing. I saw a conversation that was happening on LinkedIn that Steve Crescenzo was involved with the other day, and he was slamming press releases because they always say, we are excited to announce. Are you really excited about announcing this? And I said, not everybody does press releases like that. I said, he was actually slamming press releases in general. Do they actually do any good anymore? And I made the case that there are things that press releases can do for you, in addition to satisfying regulatory requirements in some cases. But for search engine optimization, getting a press release out there, that there's going to be 100 publications that fill their space with press releases. And that because Google rewards currency and frequency, having your press release, a new release with new content show up in 100 different places is going to boost you in that algorithm. But are the press releases actually any good? So I shared one. I said, here's real news that we actually wanted to get into the hands of people. It was the first building ever in the world to be awarded a certification called a true certification. That means the building was built with zero waste, nothing going to landfills or incinerators. That's a big deal.
Yes.
And it matters to be known as the first to have done something like that. And Steve, when he read the release, he came back and he said, "And you weren't excited about it?" Yeah, he did. So, but that's not content marketing. That's an SEO practice based on work that we have been doing for 100 years. So content marketing is different, and it takes work. We just did a relaunch of the company's website, and there was a decision made above my pay grade to the news section was just going to be news. And I got to be honest, we don't have that much in a year, maybe 5 or 6 real solid news stories. And I said, well, what about all of the stuff that talks about our company culture? And, because we know that a good number of the people who come to our website are college students wondering where they're going to go do their internship or where they're going to apply for a job. And culture matters. And they said, well, not in the news section. So now we have a blog on the website to handle all of that. So that's a bit of content marketing, but it's more complicated, and it takes work that it seems to me a lot of leaders and organizations aren't willing to fund.
Yeah, in fact, looking at a chart on the content marketing website in this report, why strategy isn't as effective as it could be, and this is where it comes down to your point earlier. It's not bad content; it's just not good marketing generally, because these apply no matter what. Lack of clear goals is the number one reason why strategies aren't effective. Lack of clear goals, and not data driven. That's a modern event, I'd say. Not tied to a customer journey, ineffective research. I've seen all of this, as you will have done, on everything apart from content marketing or including content, but it's everywhere. That word again, everywhere. So
all at once.
All at once. It's unrealistic expectations is a great one. And to your point, at the very beginning, poor content quality. That's the least reason, but that's on the list. Poor content quality. So there's work to be done, without a doubt. And let's talk about Facebook and Instagram, Threads, the Meta social properties that we touched on earlier. And this is the dilemma that I mentioned. I call it the fence-sitting dilemma. Quit or not? In light of events recently, particularly Mark Zuckerberg's announcement a few weeks ago now on the killing off of moderation on all the platforms and the storm of opinions and comments that have resulted consequently. Link it to Trump's inauguration and the moves by, as I'm getting to learn the terminology now, Shell, the Silicon Valley bros, and what they're all doing with all of this, and the fear, uncertainty, and doubt everywhere. So I've been using this as an example, I suppose, to illustrate my own dilemma on this, which is a big deal for me, I have to say. I then discovered also for lots of other people. So this dilemma surrounding Meta's platforms that I mentioned has reached a turning point for many people. And Mark Zuckerberg's announcement of a significant policy shift on content moderation, among other things, has cast an even brighter spotlight on the ethical challenges of engaging with these platforms. It's a question I've wrestled with, and judging by the responses to my recent posts, I'm not alone. In a recent blog post, I reflected on my own journey with Meta platforms, and I said, I've enjoyed using Threads, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook to connect with others, but recent revelations have forced me to question whether these platforms align with my values. I did this in 2023 about X, formerly Twitter, which I joined in 2006, soon after Twitter's founding, ultimately eschewing posting on that platform. But stepping away from Meta, as I have discovered, is proving far more complex. I wrote on Threads and in a post to friends on Facebook just a few days ago, I said this: I'm still on the fence about deleting Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Spending less time on them is one thing, but it's proving far more difficult than I imagined letting them go, especially Facebook, where I have cousins and other family members there as the one place online to connect, as well as a large number of private groups. How does this fence sitting fit with my values that I've talked about? This is a real dilemma, I said. Well, that post generates significant discussion on Facebook, reflecting the complexity of this issue, and people shared what they thought about this. One friend shared their decisive action. He said, I have made the decision to leave, deleted most of my content already to have no traces there. I read about people who have Trump and Vance as friends without adding them, and when they removed them, they were added again. Also read about content algorithm changes in a way that they see Republican stuff and content they are not interested in. Others, however, pointed to the tension between ethics and practicality, a balancing act that resonates deeply. One said, "We all have to balance personal ethics with reality on a daily basis. Zuckerberg and others have chosen to dance with the devil because otherwise the devil will burn them. But you're in a unique position to do something about it, Neville. You have considerable personal influence and some very influential contacts. Together, you could stay within this broken system and influence the change we need." The idea of leading change from within is quite a compelling one, but so is the argument for stepping away entirely. A different commenter drew from their experience of leaving X. "I'm also on the fence, but I recall how everyone urged me to stay on Twitter when I chose to leave after Musk took over. Initially, almost none of my contacts moved. Now they've all followed. If family and friends aren't willing to make a little effort to stay in touch, it really makes you question the value of those relationships." That's one perspective. For others, the middle ground, gradual disengagement, feels like the best path. Said one, "Slowly backing away is probably the best thing anyway for your own well-being. Spend less time and slowly back away. At a certain point, the right path will make itself known." I did like that sentence there. So like something coming down from the heavens, perhaps. And then there's the stark truth about the digital landscape as a whole, according to one friend. "Think the owners of your internet provider are charming, progressive people? Your modem? It's like Twitter. Before Musk, it was in large part owned by Saudi oil barons. Terrible, terrible people. But at least they kept their mouths shut and hands off." That's one perspective. So the decision to stay or leave Meta platforms is not just a practical one. It's a profoundly personal and ethical choice. For many, Facebook remains the only online space to connect with family and friends or participate in private groups. For others, stepping away is a statement of principle, a way to reclaim a sense of alignment with their values. But is there a middle path? Can those of us who abhor the direction Meta is heading remain engaged while advocating for change from within? Or does our departure speak louder than our presence ever could? These questions have no easy answers, but the discussion they spark reminds us that our choices matter, not just for ourselves, but for the kind of digital world we hope to create. So I'm still sitting on the fence, Shell, even though this and a lot of other things have given me a lot of help in thinking this through in a way that helps me come to a conclusion. And I think there are some choices that may not seem apparent to many, which is there isn't anywhere else like Facebook, a centralized walled garden controlled by a corporation. There isn't anywhere like that else the same way. But there are places that don't have any of that controlling freakery behind it all. It doesn't have algorithms that influence everything and interfere with what you want to do. It could be Mastodon. That could be a place for niche networks that are all independent yet connected. And that's a big topic to explore. That's not for now to explore. But I'm throwing that possibility into the ring. Requires, I think, a shift in thinking from others who might be interested but realize there's not a kind of like a ready, set place they can go to and just chat. There's stuff they need to do, I suspect. In any case, I'm still on the fence. I'm thinking more about this. I want to thank all my friends who contributed. And by the way, I've not named anyone because that was a private post on Facebook. It wasn't public. But they're great. And there's others I haven't mentioned. But thanks to everyone because it's been very, very helpful. So what are your thoughts, Shel?
Well, I'm not on the fence. I've made my decision. Before I get to that, though, I think it's worth noting that at the inauguration of President Trump, which was moved indoors, reportedly because of the weather, although there have been outdoor inaugurations in colder weather in the past, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas and Governor Rick... I'm sorry.
That guy.
I've got that wrong. I've got to make a time code note.
Okay.
And Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida were in an overflow room watching on a screen, while up there with Trump in the room where it was happening were Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Elon Musk. So you can see where the power dynamic is shifting. And if America is sliding into an oligarchy, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Musk are among the oligarchs that are at the peak of that hierarchy. And it's not just Meta. It is the world of big tech. And it's hard for new players to get in there because they don't have the resources, especially in the world of AI. They don't have the resources of a Google or an OpenAI to build the models that cost billions of dollars to do. So what you see is that the networks that we participate in are now being controlled by America's oligarchs. And that's troubling. That said, Facebook has 3 billion people as its average monthly users. I think it's 650 million on X. It's easier to leave X because everyone I engage with is not there and never was. Why did people initially go to Facebook? They went to Facebook because remember, Facebook came along as blogging was big, but blogging required effort, right? You had to know how to set one up. You had to pay a fee for the use of server space and for the blogging utility. This stuff wasn't free. There was a commitment to it. And if I just wanted someplace where I wanted to go say something when it occurred to me or share a picture of my cat or what have you, I wasn't going to go to that amount of trouble with a blog. But when Facebook came along, wow, it's free. And all I have to do is go to this text field and share what I want to share and I'm done. So that's what led a lot of people to embrace Facebook and led to 3 billion people using it at least once a month. There is no country that has 3 billion people. It is bigger than any country out there. And this is why I am able to find cousins that I haven't talked to in 20 years. In fact, the husband of a cousin saw me post that I was going to a concert in Las Vegas, and he wrote, I live in Las Vegas. And so we got together with my cousin Elise and her husband Terrence, whom I haven't seen in decades. This is what Facebook enables because of its sheer size. And I think there is a legitimate point to one of those comments that you shared about how serious are your family connections about staying in touch. But second cousins, it's not routine for those people to stay in touch anyway. Facebook has enabled connections that we typically lost in life before that. Also, people I went to high school with that I haven't talked to since then, discovering each other on Facebook. There are also the groups, but I'll tell you what really nailed my decision that I'm not going to leave Facebook is the Meta Quest, the VR headset that I use for exercise. I saw in the Supernatural community, Supernatural is the name of the workout app that I use, and there's about 20,000 people in the community on Facebook. Somebody said, what other headsets allow you to use Supernatural? Because I want to leave Meta, and that means dumping my Meta Quest. And the answer is Meta owns Supernatural. It's their product. The only place you can get it is on the Quest. There's also not a comparable headset at the price point for the Meta Quest. So you look at all of this, the groups, the pages, the connections with people that you would lose, and they're not all going to go to Blue Sky and deal with that. What I compare it to is, you have Zuckerberg who has turned to the dark side. Well, the United States is now being led by Donald Trump. I'm not leaving that either. I'm not sitting on the fence about whether I'm going to leave the United States. It's my home.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay here and I'm going to fight for what I believe is right in this country, and I've made the decision that Facebook is like that. I'm going to stay there and fight for what I think is right there, and not lose everything I get out of it.
I totally hear you, and I think this is where it does come down to, each person's circumstance are unique to that person. I don't have that infrastructure to regret if I didn't have it. Yes, I've got cousins I'm in touch with, but I don't have, to my knowledge, second cousins I've not seen for 30 years that I will find them on Facebook. No. So if I decided to quit entirely, that wouldn't be such a consequential, momentous decision to have to balance. I know, for instance, that most of the family members that I connect with, I could connect elsewhere. Bit of effort, but I could. I think, though, that to some people, and a couple of the comments that I didn't mention, now I think about it, talked very strongly about that, the values area. They're not prepared to compromise those values, being part of something they abhor totally. They are leaving, and the fact they're gone. So I get that. So I'm still sitting on the fence in terms of leave or stay, and if I stay, in what form do I stay? In fact, I joined Facebook in, I think it was June or April 2007. I blame Philip Young. He invited me. He told me about it.
It's his fault.
So, Philip, it's your fault. So, but, the climate, the environment back then was totally different. You mentioned, it was the dawn of blogging, and this was easy because you didn't have to pay. There was actually MySpace at the time. I had a MySpace account, and that actually got me thinking that was complicated compared to Facebook. And you're absolutely right. Facebook, you open an account and immediately you do stuff, you search, and boom, there's 15 of your friends already, more than likely, more often than not. It started out as a useful thing. And I think that was the appeal to a lot of people too. There's this exuberance of this at the time when all these smart kids in Silicon Valley were doing stuff, all this stuff was coming up. And it was a very American product, but it caught on here in the UK very rapidly, and indeed across most of Europe as well. So there's that. And as you said, 3 billion, yep, there's a lot. The alternatives are not apparent at all what they are. And there's no universal that like everyone's going to migrate over there. No, it doesn't exist, that kind of place. And you're right. Blue Sky, I've had this conversation with a number of people examining places like that. They're not comparable to Facebook. They don't have private groups. They don't have, a marketplace that you can sell stuff and buy stuff the way that you can on Facebook. When we moved here to Somerset, before that, boy, was I the heaviest user of Facebook Marketplace. Very useful. So there's that kind of selfish reason, perhaps, that I get a great deal of personal value out of being there, so should I stay. The values thing, though, is a big thing for most people. It's not that it's not a big thing for me. It's not the biggest thing. Because one recurring thought I'm having is it relates to that comment who said, stay and you can try and affect change from inside. It is that. Why should I change my whole social environment because of one man who happens to be the man who owns the damn place? But his behavior should not directly affect my own decisions and therefore my own behavior. That's part of my thinking. But it's like it's an interesting analogy where you talk about you're in the US and you're not going to leave just because Donald Trump got elected. That's I would argue that's a wholly different circumstance, a wholly different situation. We don't have that here, not yet anyway. So this is still a dilemma for me, and I've not made my mind totally yet. I have to say, though, I'm leaning more towards not exiting. There's other things I might do, but I'm listening to what people are saying. So I set myself a deadline at the end of January, which is what I said in my post back at the beginning of January, in light of Zuckerberg's announcement. I'll give him 30 days to show that I should stay. So that's where I'm at currently. So I've got a week to go.
And I'm changing my behaviors on Facebook. One of the things that I've always enjoyed about Facebook, and it's not a Facebook feature, it's my own decision, is that I don't friend anybody from work on Facebook. It's the one place where I don't care if it's my colleague in my department or a guy, he's an engineer there who's the only other person in the company I know who's really into jam bands besides me, and we have great conversations. No, he works at the same company. I don't want anybody who works at the same company connected with me on Facebook so that I can let it rip, right? And it's the place where I am sharing my political perspectives that I don't share on other social networks, although I have started talking about DEI from a business perspective on LinkedIn. But in terms of how I feel about Trump or what have you, that's what I do on Facebook. But I'm going to be using it less. I'm going to continue to use it for the groups that I'm in where I have tremendous value. I have virtually ended my use of Instagram. The only thing I check there is my daughter's stories because I need a way to stay in touch with my daughter. The way you do that with the kids these days is online. She's in her 30s, but yeah, still, if I want to see pictures of my granddaughter, they're going to be in her stories. So that's how I see them. But I'm not sharing anything there, and I'm not commenting or liking anybody else's posts or looking through photos. And in fact, as you'll hear in a minute, there's a new alternative on the horizon that I think is probably going to do pretty well. But I'm just going to dial it way back. I'm going to use it for what I use it for. That's the future of Facebook and me.
Yeah. I'm thinking about behavior change, and what I've done at the moment is downloaded all my content from all Meta properties, which I do about once a year. I hadn't done Facebook for a while. I've got all that. I've got all my Instagram pictures. I'm probably not going to share them anywhere, at least for the foreseeable future. They're sitting on a solid state drive that's not connected to anything. They're all there in a little archive, and I'm okay with that. I haven't deleted them from anywhere yet. I might or might not do that. So I don't get much value out of Instagram, actually. I've got more weird people following me than I know what to do with. Most of them, scantily dressed, busty young women. And where they come from, I have no idea. So it has little value. Threads is new. but I've already dialed back on Threads, mainly because there's stuff about it I'm not liking anymore, I have to say. And so Blue Sky is my preference, but that's not an alternative to Facebook at all. I don't see it that way, other than the messaging. I never use Messenger, by the way. For years, I've not used Messenger. So Facebook suffers from the consequences, I think, and perception of the various scandals they've been involved with in recent years, notably Cambridge Analytica. They've lost trust, certainly, and Messenger featured large in one. That's why I stopped using Messenger. That must be 6-7 years ago now, whatever it was, I can't remember. So we have, I think, parallel views that don't diverge, really. I'm not disagreeing with you about the family, and therefore that's why I'm staying. Not at all. I recognize that's important, and it's important to me too, but maybe not to the same extent as you, and it's certainly a smaller group that I'm connected with. But the dilemma for me is real in terms of this has been a large part of my online experience for nearly 20 years. And to suddenly stop it is the thing. What am I going to do? My God, all those cat videos I love watching. The real scrolling that I do late at night sometimes, just catching up with weird stuff going on in the world.
Just switch to TikTok for that.
Yeah, I get immense pleasure. I've been on. I don't like TikTok at all. Truly, I don't. It's not my scene. It's not a generational thing. I just don't like it. There's too many weird people there. I don't want all that kind of stuff. That's my perception anyway. But there are other things. PixelFed I started up as a potential alternative to Instagram. Well, you're going to talk about them, I know, but I mean, there's other alternatives emerging. I've still got a Flickr account, for God's sake, from 2004.
Yeah, me too.
And that I've not been to, I've not logged in for about 5 years, so I hope it's still there.
I don't even know who owns that anymore.
But so we're at not a crossroads exactly, but we're at a kind of a square with many avenues to go down as to what happens. And judging by the comments that I got to my post, 38 or so, others are dealing with a similar dilemma.
Well, especially those who are looking to flee X more than they're trying to flee Facebook, although certainly people looking to get out of Facebook, people are finding themselves drawn to Blue Sky. Now, of course, we've talked about Blue Sky before, but it continues to exceed expectations. It's started attracting the A-listers who were mostly using Twitter to share whatever was on their minds. In recent weeks, we've seen Lizzo, Stephen King, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the New York Times, the Washington Post, a slew of politicians, notably from New York and Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, a number of National Basketball Association teams, sports journalists. The list just keeps growing. It's become common.
Just to add to that, we've seen significant numbers of people in continental Europe and European Union countries quitting governments, police forces, academic institutions. One case, I think it was Austria, it might not be Austria, one European, 60 academic institutions quit. We've seen others in public sector organizations across the continent quitting and going. Most of them gone to Blue Sky.
Right.
So some have added Blue Sky and are staying on Twitter, but their primary channel is moving to Blue Sky. So all that, it's actually global, I would argue.
Yeah, and what you're seeing is a lot of people in the platform that they were using saying, I'm leaving, here's my Blue Sky handle. And that is really motivating a lot of people to head over and set up an account on Blue Sky, whether they're planning on leaving Facebook or X or not. What started as a niche alternative to traditional social networks has become a compelling option for brands looking to escape the increasing chaos and declining trust in platforms owned by increasingly distasteful corporate giants like Elon Musk and Meta. Well, first, let's address why Blue Sky is drawing attention. They are up to over 27 million users and growing. It's not just a haven for disillusioned Twitter users. It offers something fundamentally different. We've talked about the fact that it is a decentralized platform where users have more control over their data, their feeds, and their overall experience. This decentralization makes it less vulnerable to the whims of a single owner or entity, which has been a major pain point for communicators navigating X's unpredictability or Meta's controversial policies. One of Blue Sky's standout features is its approach to custom feeds. Users can create or subscribe to feeds tailored to specific interests or communities, whether that's marketing trends, environmental accidents, or activisms, or niche hobbies. For brands, this opens up new possibilities to connect directly with highly targeted audiences in a way that feels organic instead of intrusive. Imagine creating a custom feed for your brand's community, where you curate not just your own content, but relevant posts from thought leaders and influencers in your space. It's a way to position your brand as a trusted source of value, not just another voice clamoring for attention. On the surface, Blue Sky resembles early Twitter with a focus on text-based posts and a chronological timeline, but it's what's happening under the hood that matters. Blue Sky's AT protocol, we've talked about it, short for Authenticated Transfer, gives users the ability to own their identities across platforms. Now, that doesn't just apply to individual users. Brands can establish a presence that isn't tied to one specific platform, reducing the risk of being derailed by a platform's sudden policy changes or outages. But wait, there's more. The company has announced the development of Flashes, a photo-sharing app that's being described as a direct competitor to Instagram, which is, of course, owned by Meta. This move is a clear bid to attract users and brands who are fed up with Meta's recent decisions to roll back content moderation. Flashes will focus on visual storytelling, allowing users to post up to 4 images or short-form videos. Why will people embrace Flashes? Because they're already on Blue Sky and enamored of it, and it's connected. Now, of course, Blue Sky isn't without challenges. Its rapid growth, partly fueled by high-profile Twitter quitters, has led to a significant increase in moderation demands. Reports of harmful content surged 17-fold in 2024 alone, prompting concerns about whether the platform can scale its governance responsibly. The company has just 20 full-time employees and about 100 contractors serving as content moderators. So this is a critical consideration when venturing into new social spaces. But Blue Sky seems committed to improving its moderation tools and policies, and its community-driven approach gives hope that these issues can be addressed collaboratively. We'll see. So what should communicators do as they consider Blue Sky? First, don't dismiss it as just another Twitter clone. Its foundational values of decentralization and user control resonate with a growing segment of your stakeholders who are tired of being at the mercy of algorithms and corporate agendas. Experimentation is key here. Start by securing your brand's handle and exploring the platform's unique features like custom feeds. Test the waters with content that aligns with Blue Sky's ethos, authentic, conversational, and community-focused. Engage with users who are passionate about the same causes or industries that your brand represents. And keep an eye on Flashes. With Instagram becoming increasingly contentious, a fresh decentralized approach to photo and video sharing could be exactly what brands and users alike have been waiting for. It's not like there aren't other alternatives. You mentioned PixelFed, Neville, but people who've already found a home on Blue Sky, as I say, may be more inclined to opt for Flashes. Frankly, Blue Sky is giving us a much-needed opportunity to rethink how we connect with audiences and how we tell our stories in this new media world.
It's true. And whilst I was listening to you talking there, I just looked up on the user count website on Blue Sky. It's just under 30 million as we speak today. And
so up 3 million from when I grabbed the number.
Right. So it's actually 29,462,400 and the count is going up. But at the bottom, it says increasing by 2.6 users per second. So it'll probably hit 30 million in that case before the end of the weekend, I'd say. So it's on a roll. I think, you and I joined at the time of the private beta before it was even public. It went public.
You needed an invite.
Right, needed an invite and all that. And it was in the low, I think I was in, I honestly can't remember offhand now. But it was like the 5 millionth or something. No, actually 500,000 or something. It was a very, very low number. So it's appealing. And in fact, people coming from X will find familiarity with the look and feel of it, the interface, in many, many respects. But you mentioned moderation, and that I think will become increasingly more important than it would have been in light particularly of Meta's announcement that they're ditching it entirely and replacing it with this kind of the user note stuff that Musk implemented in Twitter, which is useless. Everywhere I read about it, they say it's absolutely not worth the pixels that they're written in. So, good luck with that. So, but Blue Sky are serious about, I believe. They have challenges. You mentioned that, you touched on that. And I think a big one, of course, is how they're going to sustain themselves financially with this. Ads have just been announced on Threads, a disappointing move. But hey, come on, you're not ever going to find a social network without ads on a Meta platform. Believe that. So that's coming soon. It's on test in the US and Japan. No sound from Blue Sky as to whether about advertising. They have floated ideas about a subscription model. I find that appealing. So, for myself, If I'm on a place I could trust and feel reasonably confident I'm not going to encounter too many weird people, and it would cost me X, I'd consider that. So it is an alternative, right, Charlotte? It really is a feasible alternative for X users. I'm not sure about Facebook. If you're looking for the same experience, it's not that. But you might find it a better experience.
As a place to engage with customers and stakeholders.
Or friends, yeah.
Yeah,
as well.
opposed to everything else that you can do on Facebook. I have revised my outlook on Blue Sky. I think right now it is the place to be. There are reasons that people are not going. I mean, Threads was seen as one of the great alternatives to X, but now because it's a meta property and subject to those same content moderation guidelines that Zuckerberg has implemented on Facebook, it's less appealing. And frankly, it has deteriorated, in my view, when I go check the feed over the last month or so. Whereas Blue Sky is quite engaging and welcoming. But when I see the influx of journalists, I see Jeff Jarvis, for example, is posting there all the time now. I saw a post there last night during the Senate confirmation vote on Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense from Senator Elizabeth Warren on Blue Sky. So it is gradually evolving as the place for thought leaders, opinion leaders, influencers to be sharing their views. That's what made Twitter compelling. Even if Twitter never got to 1 billion users before Musk's acquisition, it's what was quoted in mainstream media when somebody there said something, a government leader or a business leader. And that is slowly shifting to Blue Sky.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I think the days watching and waiting are over. The time to establish the presence is here.
I think Twitter has fulfilled that, and it's going to take, I think, something major to suddenly shift that away. But it is gradually diminishing, as the examples I made earlier about organizations moving to Blue Sky, but still keeping Twitter going because people are used to seeing them there. It'll take something, I think, quite significant to suddenly shift that. But it will take place, I'm sure, and Blue Sky is looking appealing. One of the worries I have about Blue Sky's appeal is advertisers and brands being there and behaving like they do on Twitter. No, don't want that. The beauty of Blue Sky, which is very different to X, is you have a block button and a mute button and a report button that you can liberally wield. I've been doing that recently, mostly for blocking out political content, US political content. But you can do that with anything. And I think that gives the power to the user in that case, because you don't have that power on X unless you are paying the money for some of the features that they offer. I think, let's keep a watching eye on this, I think. I mean, I'm looking at the count again. It's edging up. It'll hit 30 before the end of the weekend, I bet you. So I think it is an exciting place. I spend more time there now. I've made new friends there, but I've connected with a lot of people who've come from X mostly. I've actually not encountered someone I know who's come there saying they've left Facebook to come there. I've not found anyone saying that. But it's worth exploring and see if you like it. That's the thing.
Yeah, and I think brands that misbehave, which would include behaving the way they have been behaving for decades, because it's part of the ethos at Blue Sky to put the user in control, it's easy to block those brands.
That's right.
And they won't get any traction out of their presence there. The brands that figure out the ethos and engage authentically, create that resource in a community for their customer base, for example, they'll succeed there.
I agree with you. And the ones I see there are behaving that way, which is a good thing. But I've got the block button if I need it.
And it's a good thing that it's there, too. Yeah. And that'll take us to the end of this episode of For Immediate Release. Our next episode is scheduled to drop on Monday, February 24th, the monthly long-form episode. We will be doing our midweek short-form episodes in between, so keep an eye out for those. In the meantime, your comments are so deeply appreciated, and we would love to be able to include them in the next monthly episode in February. You can leave those wherever we share updates of new episodes on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Blue Sky. We look at all of those for your comments, in addition to the show notes on And threads.
And don't forget, we have a FIR podcast channel on Blue Sky, and follow that. It's FIR podcast.
That's right. You know, we need to put that in the show notes so people can go just find it rather than try to search for it.
Right. There's a link on the homepage of the website, but yeah, we should put that in the show notes. You're right.
Yep. So you could leave notes in the FIR community on Facebook. We do have a community there for our listeners. It's not well populated anymore, but it's still there. We even have a page on Facebook for FIR. So, wherever you can leave a comment, you can also send us an email to fircomments@gmail.com. You can attach an audio file. It's been ages since we've played an audio comment. Ever since Chris Hansen retired.
Yeah.
I think. But we would love to get some of those. Also, your ratings and reviews are what help new listeners find us. Please, wherever you listen to your podcast, drop us a rating and a review. And until next time, that will be a 30 for this episode of For Immediate Release.